NASA, we're coming for you. For 60 years, you've been faking space. There are no spheres in the heavens. The experts have devised them in the imagination so it was easier to understand their movements. So what's that mean? Well, it means stars are not distant. Guilty of a cover-up the likes of which has never been seen in human history. Everything, and I mean everything that we were taught about space, about the planets, about the orbits is a hoax. It's a lie. That means our entire idea of the cosmos isn't just wrong, it's very wrong. Astronomically wrong. So, any scientists, any physicists out there going to do anything? Or is the scientific community just going to sit there and do nothing? You guys are really just making it harder for the truth to come out by protecting these frauds and the liars that deceived all of us.
Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement.
Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit, and that's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
We've been programmed and indoctrinated to believe in this round, spinning ball Earth flying through space. If you watch movies, you'll start to notice all the time you're seeing this right in your face. If you think about it, you were shown the globe and taught, before you can even think for yourself or even barely walk, you were taught the globe model. This stuff is imprinted in our minds, and we grow up and it's hard to let go.
To all those of you who can't possibly imagine a deception so large, it's time to realize that this isn't a conspiracy anymore. You just need to do the research, and you'll see that we don't and can't live on a spinning ball in space. Period. Math is not reality.
Pilot is flying around the curve of the Earth, then he should be dipping the nose down. Every 5 minutes he should be dipping the nose down to stay around the curve. That's absolute proof that a plane flies over a flat surface rather than a curved one.
Challenge my own worldview. And I'm not afraid to do that. Many Americans are. They just have gut, instinctual, emotional responses. And if it doesn't go with their familiar narrative of how they think the world's supposed to work, they ridicule, they laugh, they engage themselves in groupthink. They are afraid to question their current reality.
When you realize that we've been lied to about everything when it comes to space.
People wonder why I don't trust NASA. That's why I don't trust NASA. Everybody's trying to show you stuff from space, and you keep rejecting it. This is why I reject it. These guys are liars.
The definition of a fisheye lens is an ultra-wide-angle lens that produces strong visual distortion to create a wide, panoramic, or hemispherical image.
Whenever you start to tilt it upwards or downwards, that's where you get the curvature distortion. So if you tilt the lens upwards in relationship to the horizon, it's going to kind of curve up and create a bowl type effect. If you tilt it downward, it's going to create a sphere or a kind of an orb type effect.
We can see the curve there, but if that's the curve of the Earth, and it's not very big. Go at the video yourself, have a look for yourself. It's 127,000 feet, and it's a complete. But how we get from that to this curve, I have no idea. I do know it's spiral lens distortion, and they're trying to deceive everybody.
Curvature. I mean, it's definitely not curving down. If anything, the horizon is rising to meet our eye line.
Okay, here it is. The world is round.
What?
You know how everybody believes the world is flat, like a pancake? Well, they're all wrong. The world is actually round, like an orange.
The world is an orange. And?
And? Well, that's it. It's a great idea. It's one of my best ones.
Yeah, but what kind of orange?
Look, just sleep on it. In the morning, the idea will come to you again, and you won't even remember where you got it. Get it?
Got it.
Good.
That's it. It's round.
Well, it's an orange.
No, the world. It's round. That's why ships at sea disappear over the horizon, and why the Earth's shadow on the moon is round during an eclipse. And so, our traditional view of the Earth as flat is wrong. And if that is wrong, then all our accepted views of our place in the solar system should also be questioned.
Why do you think that Truman has never come close to discovering the true nature of his world until now?
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
Personally, I think the unconquered South face is the only one worth scaling. It's a 20,000-foot sheer wall of ice, but that's never stopped me before.
Big surprise, yeah. It's cold out here.
Yeah, it is. It's like the South Pole.
It's like the deep South Pole, if there was one. There isn't, though.
Yeah. So what's happening in our world right now? Because there is a lot of news that actually is relevant that's not that
Here's
uplifting.
the thing. It's not our world.
None
That's
of this is
key.
real?
Nope.
So you're just passing
We don't
through.
matter. We don't matter.
Skylar, I was medicated. I mean, I could have said the world was flat.
You know what I think? I think you accidentally told the truth.
Humans, for the most part, don't have a clue. They don't want one or need one either. They're happy. They think they have a good bead on things.
Well, why the big secret? People are smart. They can handle it.
A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat. And 15 minutes ago, you knew that people were alone on this planet.
Imagine what you'll know tomorrow.
How many of you have ever seen the movie The Matrix? All right, so maybe more than half of us. All right, for those who haven't seen the movie The Matrix, there's a scene in the very beginning of the film where the main character is presented with two pills, one blue and one red, and he has to make a choice. If he chooses the blue pill, he'll fall asleep, and when he wakes up, everything will be exactly the way it's always been. If you choose the red pill, he'll finally learn the truth. And I'm here today to give you that red pill. So, what does the matrix look like? Let me show you. Now, despite what you might be thinking, these two circles are not equal. I repeat, these two circles are not equal. One is in fact larger than the other. What I need you to do is determine which one that is. So, please raise your hand if you believe the blue circle is larger than the red. All right. Please raise your hand if you believe the red circle is larger than the blue. All right, very good. Now, before I said anything about these two circles, what was your first instinct? Equal, right? Because they look equal. And the reason why they look equal is because, in fact, they are equal. These two circles are identical. Yet I got just about every one of you to raise your hand and say that they're not. So what do we learn? That you can be manipulated like that to believe in something that goes against your natural instincts. Just imagine as a child you're taught that the blue circle is larger than the red. If you say it enough times, you convince yourself that's the truth. If you're told the lie enough times, it becomes part of your reality. And if enough people are taught that lie, that the blue circle is larger than the red, well, now it becomes part of the culture. And if that culture then passes that misinformation along to the next generation, well, now it becomes tradition. The Matrix is a story. It's a story. When told enough times to enough people, it becomes part of that culture. It becomes the tradition. And this story is being told over and over every day.
Is the Earth flat or round? It's round. Okay, now let's see. How do we go about proving that? Go to the seashore. Go to a seashore.
Watch as ships sail away. They don't disappear all at once. Now, first, the bottom will disappear. See, the bottom of the ship is gone. Now we can see midway up, and then the whole thing disappears. Now, ships came back. They didn't fall off a table. So people realized that the world is curved. I mean, it's a big curve, but it's curved. So, the process of testing claims, the world is flat, the world is round, is what we call science.
Welcome to the empty horizon. Keep in mind that this is an empty horizon. There are no visible boats.
As we zoom in, we see two boats appear along what I call the wavefront edge, which is the blue line of last discernible water. We also can see, as we zoom in further, something I call the mirror line. It is a reflection that forms under the boats after they pass the wavefront edge. The mast represents approximately 1/3 of the full height of the boat. Instruments and equipment attached to the mast structure create a visual line. This interval therefore represents approximately 1/6 of the overall height over the water. The lensing effect essentially acts like a funhouse mirror, stretching the top of the image and compressing the bottom of the image over time.
Watch as ships sail away. They don't disappear all at once. No, first, the bottom will disappear.
Here, as our ship passes behind a channel marker, we can make several observations. The channel marker has its own mirror line very, very close to our wavefront. By contrast, the mirror line for the ship is much higher, seeing as it is much further away. Another indicator is how much smaller the ship has appeared to become. As I take this moment to zoom out and observe the overall structure, keep in mind that now the ship appears to be shorter than the channel marker, and yet 1/3 of it appears to be mast, and 2/3 of it appears to be boat. Oh, and I'd almost forgotten. This started out as an empty horizon. Yeah, I mean, like, totally empty. There wasn't anything on it when we started, and that was 18 minutes ago.
Now, first, the bottom will disappear. See, the bottom of the ship is gone. Now we can see midway up, and then the whole thing disappears.
One last time, to be clear, the distance between the mast top and the spreader bar and its distance from the mirror line is not inconsistent with the entire boat still being present above the mirror line, but hidden by distortion.
Wasting our time. You're not going to get us to not believe in evolution.
And why is that?
Because the smartest scientists in the entire world all agree that it's real.
I'm glad you brought that up. This is Aristotle, thought to be the smartest man on the planet. He believed that the Earth was the center of the universe, and everybody believed him because he was so smart. Until another smartest guy came around, Galileo, and he disproved that theory. Galileo then thought comets were an optical illusion, and there's no way that the moon could cause the ocean's tides. Everybody believed that because he was so smart. He was also wrong. And then, best of all, Sir Isaac Newton gets born and blows everybody's nips off with his big brains. Of course, he also thought he could turn metal into gold and died eating mercury. Are you seeing a pattern?
No.
Mr. Reynolds, these were all the smartest scientists on the planet. Only problem is, they kept being wrong.
This is insane, you fool!
I'm a fool because I have more faith in the saints that wrote the Bible?
Yeah, because you just read the words of a bunch of guys that you never met, and you just take it on faith that everything they wrote was true.
And what makes you think what your scientists are writing is any more truer than my saints?
Because there are volumes of proven data, numbers, figures. There are fossil records.
Have you poured through the data yourself? The numbers, the figures?
Well, no. No.
Oh, interesting. So let me get this straight, Mr. Reynolds. You get your information from a book written by men you've never met, and you take their words as truth based on a willingness to believe, a desire to accept, a leap of, dare I say it, faith?
So what did we learn? That you can be manipulated like that to believe in something that goes against your natural instincts.
This is a group of social criminals, these people in the space program. Nassholes, I call them. I have a very low tolerance level for stupid bullshit. Every one of those items is provably untrue at one level or another, but we believe them because they're pounded into our heads from the time we're children. That's what they do with that kind of stuff. They put it in the heads of kids. They pound it in there because they know kids are too young to be able to mount a sophisticated argument against these kind of ideas. And so kids, and up to a certain age, by the way, kids are going to believe everything a grown-up tells them, everything. So kids never learn to question things. Nobody questions things in this country anymore. Nobody questions things. Why? People are too fat and happy. Americans have been silenced, bought off and silenced by gizmos and toys. And as a result, no one's ever learned to question things. Kids who want to learn to read are going to learn to read. Much more important to teach children to question what they read.
There's not one authentic picture of this oblate, pear-shaped, spinning ball that they claim we live on. I'm sorry to tell you, the only thing that's been to space is your imagination. There is no such thing as space. For thousands of years, all ancient civilizations knew the Earth was flat. Until 500 years ago, they took the Word of God and they turned it upside down. They said, no, we revolve around the sun. The sun's in the middle, and we're spinning through space and wobbling with the sun at over 600,000 miles per hour. When an organization of pseudoscientists tell me to go completely against what all my senses tell me, that we're stationary and flat, I see it's flat, it's immovable. When I'll go outside, when I send a camera up without GoPro or fisheye lens, when I send a balloon up 100,000 feet and it shows the horizon flat, I can't go against that. When I see skylines 60 to 100 miles away, when spherical geometry says they should be behind the curve, all this stuff isn't adding up.
From Joshua Nowicki, and what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I say, continue to believe pathological liars and you're an idiot.
By the way, how much money is being spent on space? You should emblazon this in your head. Here it goes. This is the pie chart. $330 billion a year is spent on space.
This certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made from the White House. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you have done.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor and privilege for us to be here.
A journey to another planet, a manned mission to Mars.
I should tell you that the first mission is scheduled to land on Mars on July the 4th, 1997, Independence Day.
We will undertake extended human missions to the moon as early as 2015, with the goal of living and working there for increasingly extended periods of time. Human missions to Mars and to worlds beyond.
But I just have to say, pretty bluntly here, we've been there before. There's a lot more of space to explore and a lot more to learn when we do. Now, last month we launched a new spacecraft as part of a re-energized space program that will send American astronauts to Mars.
We will establish a foundation for an eventual mission to Mars and perhaps someday to many worlds beyond. If we dare to dream big, and that's what our country is doing again. We're dreaming big.
You can tell it's real because it looks so fake.
I said orbiting metal expensive satellites don't exist. It's a scam on you and on me. Go ahead and try and prove satellites exist. You won't and you can't.
What we're calling satellite communication is landline communication. Most of the world's communication systems are land-based. That is a fact. And that shouldn't be a fact if satellites are real, okay? None of the stuff we use in our world today require the use of a satellite, all right? Keyword, ground-based. I know that this satellite program is straight bogus and that the billions of money that they're getting from us in taxes is being used to turn around and deceive us. Why you keep building these towers if we're paying for satellites? Any way they could exist is to hover above a certain height above the flat plane Earth and they would be stationary.
NASA does not have any evidence of the globe Earth, and they don't have any real images of Earth from space. Data visualizer and designer Robert Simon has admitted that the blue marble images are all photoshopped.
Then add the clouds back in.
There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Don't even get me started on the other so-called images of other planets. For God's sakes, they put Pluto the dog on Pluto the planet. Seriously. Of course, when looking at the evidence, NASA obviously never made it to the moon, and they sure as hell aren't going to Mars.
Returning to the space station, paving the way for future missions beyond. Well, for
report call from Capcom Steve Crow.
Discovery Houston, go and throttle up.
Roger, go and throttle up. Throttle up, throttle down, right Commander Steve Lindsay.
Expected date into a clear shortly.
Solid rocket booster separation confirmed. Guidance now converging. Discovery's onboard computers commanding the main engine nozzles to swivel, aiming the shuttle for its precise target in space for main engine cutoff.
Should have a good forward leg now and
Okay, you sound good.
Discovery Houston, negative return.
Copy, negative return.
So ground-based video ends there. Not because the shuttle's too high, but because it's too far away downrange. As I said, it's travelling horizontally at this point. So what's missing is what they call MECO, main engine cutoff. That means the shuttle no longer has any power behind it whatsoever. But after MECO is the external tank separation. As you can see from this diagram, when the tank separates, it falls back to Earth. So what's stopping the space shuttle following the same exact trajectory? Between main engine cutoff and this ohms burn, the space shuttle should follow the exact same trajectory as the external tank. But it magically does not. And conveniently, there's no video cameras to show exactly what happens. The point here is that at external tank separation, both the shuttle and the external tank are subject to this so-called force of gravity. Neither the shuttle or the external tank are in space. And yet they want us to believe that there is an orbital manoeuvring system which is capable of blasting the shuttle from this point, which is still in the Earth's atmosphere, into orbit. Well, the clue is in the name of the thing. Orbital manoeuvring system, not orbital insertion system. Where's the fuel for this? There isn't an external tank anymore, so there isn't enough fuel to blast this shuttle into orbit, even from this height. The best example of space shuttle fakery is the Challenger disaster. In 1986, the shuttle Challenger exploded about 74 seconds after takeoff, killing all 7 astronauts inside. Or did it? It turns out that 6 of the 7 are still alive and kicking today. Ellison Onizuka claims to be his identical twin brother, Claude. Yeah, I've got an identical twin brother, Claude, too. The Challenger pilot, Mickey Smith, hasn't even bothered changing his name. He's now Professor Michael J. Smith of University of Wisconsin. Now, Krista McAuliffe was a bit of a sneaky one. She was the Challenger payload specialist, quite famous for being a teacher. It turns out during her astronaut days she was using her middle name, Krista, and now she goes by her first name, Sharon, and she's a Syracuse law professor. The Challenger commander, Francis Richard Scobie, is now Dick Scobie, which sounds like a rather unpleasant disease, CEO of Cows in Trees Limited. Judith Resnick, the Challenger mission specialist, again hasn't even bothered changing her name. She's a professor at Yale Law. And finally, Ronald McNair, another Challenger mission specialist, claims to be his identical twin brother, Carl McNair. What are the odds? There are also plenty of anomalies when you look at spacewalks. For footage of spacewalks on the exterior of the International Space Station, NASA will freely admit they have a huge swimming pool called the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, where they train their astronauts, and within this huge swimming pool they have a mock-up of the exterior of the International Space Station. I'm going to show you a video from a YouTuber called Jungle Surfer, who's done the best expose of spacewalking anomalies.
Another aspect of the illusion of space travel is spacewalks. These are faked inside a swimming pool. It's a custom-built swimming pool, and that's a great way to fake zero gravity. About 6 months ago, in 2013, a gallon of water leaked into one of their spacesuits in a matter of seconds. NASA doesn't really have a proper explanation for how on earth this could have happened. There shouldn't be water leaking into someone's helmet and a person almost drowning in space. How can you drown in space? They now wear snorkels to make sure that they don't drown in space. How can this be happening? A snorkel in space? There could be some water in the porous plate sublimator. When they were on the moon, they supposedly had about a gallon of water, but that cooling system is supposed to be well away from their head. There really is no sane explanation for why a gallon of water would leak into someone's spacesuit, unless you realize the whole thing is faked inside a swimming pool. In this scene, you can see the Chinese spacewalk, and you can see a bubble coming up from the guy's suit. How do you have a bubble in space? Space is supposed to be a vacuum, not a swimming pool, but it's obviously just a swimming pool filled with water. Obviously, there would be some equipment that they could only fix from the outside, but a lot of these spacewalks, it seems like equipment they easily could have configured to be accessible from the inside of the International Space Station. It seems more like an excuse to get out and show their other space trick, which is the faking of spacewalks in a swimming pool. In this vid, you catch a glimpse of someone wearing a scuba tank. Scuba tanks in space? Snorkels and scuba tanks in space?
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. But going to Mars should be one of the next series of steps that humans do. The first step should be going back to the moon for a number of technical reasons and exploration reasons, and then after that, Mars, maybe high orbit in Venus atmosphere, maybe going to Europa. There's all kinds of targets to go to, places of interest in our solar system. The only limit to human future is in our own imagination.
Astronauts are really, really good at making pictures in space that look like you've never left the planet. In fact, it's almost hard-pressed to tell whether you're in space or not in this picture. You know, we've got some fancy backdrops, I guess.
Whilst
from
Mark
space,
Cameron. This is from Mark Cameron.
Whilst in space, have you ever looked away from Earth into the black void?
Yeah. So because you can see, you can see the stars.
Oh yeah.
You know, and pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
When you get to the edge of the atmosphere, the stars reveal themselves just as they would at night. If you're there in the daytime in the moon, you see a full night sky of stars, even with the sun in the sky as well. Even with the sun in the sky as well.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. We were never able to see stars. The sky is deep black when viewed from the moon, as it is when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon.
If you're there in the daytime in the moon, you see a full night sky of stars, even with the sun in the sky as well.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon. The sky is deep black when viewed from the moon, as it is when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon.
And we could not see stars.
It's not a black void. I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of little polka dots.
There's all the stars there, and the cool thing is about it, you can see it during the day.
And when you're in space and you're looking into deep space and you're on the sun side of the orbit, the sunlight washes out all the starlight, so you can't see any stars, just like here on Earth.
There's all the stars there, and the cool thing is about it, you can see it during the day.
Yeah, you can, and there's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
You see the gas Magellan clouds of the Milky
you
Way
see
galaxy.
the Magellanic.
The sunlight washes out all the starlight, so you can't see any stars, just like here on Earth.
Pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
Then when you look out into deep space away from the sun, it's the darkest black you can imagine.
Just the inherent beauty of it, the velvet, bottomless bucket of the universe.
In like just hanging there in a vast sea of darkness, and the most frightening darkness that you could ever imagine.
Pretty much all the time you can see the stars. From Mark Cameron. This is from Mark Cameron.
Whilst in space, have you ever looked away from Earth into the black void?
And the most frightening darkness that you could ever imagine.
Pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
The sky, of course, was black, but it had sort of a velvet sheen to it.
The biggest visual surprise was just how black the sky was. You have a brilliant sun, brighter than any sun you normally would see, even here in New Mexico. You have these extraordinarily high mountains. We were in a valley deeper than the Grand Canyon. But then you have this black sky, a sky blacker than black, as the old Vidicon expression used to be.
There's all the stars there, and the cool thing is about it, you can see it during the day.
I've often tried to explain the difference between darkness, when you turn out the lights and it's dark in here, or blackness. Blackness is the endlessness of it all. It's hard to comprehend.
Pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
English in reading too much, but I've since grown out of that, and I enjoy reading now. And I played a lot of sports. And all of that happened in a little town called York, Maine, across the United States from where we're talking to you right now.
Whoops.
Called York, Maine, across the United States from where we're talking to you right now.
Hello, my name is Steve Owen. I'm a teacher here at Riverside Prep. I'd like to ask you about the stress associated with the long periods in the space station. I'd like to ask Karen, what is the training that you get to cope with that stress and related psychological issues?
Well, for psychological issues, actually...
This is for the skeptics. Actual proof that they use wires.
You look like you're in a
Check
studio,
this out.
maybe in Omaha, Nebraska or something. The shot is so clear. Is this a hoax? Are you really in space still?
Yeah, because the air proves that you're in space.
I don't know. We're going to have to
check
do
this.
something for
Check
it.
the man with a stripy top. Look, he grabs the wire above him. Now check the man on the right. With his right arm, he grabs the wire. Did you see it? Now check in slow motion. The man on the right, look at his right arm. He's grabbing him to stabilise him. Then look at the man behind him with the stripy top on. Now he's looking up and he's grabbing the wire. Look, he's looking for the wire to grab it. Yeah, check that out. He's grabbing the wire there. Look, he's looking up because he sees the wire moving about and he's grabbing it to stabilise it. Look. Now check the man on the right with the USMC t-shirt. Check his arm. Watch this. Check his arm. Look, his arm goes to grab him, look. But he doesn't grab him, he grabs the wire. Look, there's nothing there. But he's grabbing something and it's tugging his trousers up. And then check him on the left. He looks down to see. Look, he's checking it out himself. Yeah? You wanted proof, you've just got proof there. If you don't accept this, then you are just absolutely brainwashed. This is absolute proof that they are using wires on the space station, or the fake space station. You've just been busted, guys. Busted wide open. Your hoax has been exposed. You deceiving little snakes.
It's so big, and anyone that's trying to figure out, I don't know how you introduce this thing,
but everyone's trying to visualize this. Look, you're in, and I know this is going to blow people's heads open, you're in a very, very large version of The Truman Show, which means that if it is a Truman Show, enclosed system, that means the ground is more or less perfectly flat. All the pilots that I've talked to, the air traffic controllers, the flight instructors, military pilots, civilian pilots, they've all said the same thing. It's like, look, when you get up to altitude, yeah, we all see a very perfectly flat horizon, but we're taught since we're kids that it's a globe. So it's this weird paradox. It's like up there, that's a flat horizon, but they can't do anything about it. Sorry. Go ahead.
So no, listen. I mean, it's you're either wildly intelligent or you're a complete nutjob kook. I mean, this dome theory. Let's get into this because we mentioned it briefly at the start. You think that we're living under an enclosed dome, an enclosed world.
Yeah. Take your pick as far as terminology. You want to say terrarium, planetarium, snow globe, wildlife preserve, amusement park ride, sport.
Though the federal government would have you believe that this is a view of Earth from a distance out of the spacecraft's window as it nears the moon, it is not. What they have ingeniously done is placed the camera at the back of the spacecraft and centered the lens on a circular window in the foreground, outside of which it is completely filled with the Earth in low orbit. The circumference of the window then appears to be the diameter of the Earth at a distance, with the darkened walls of the spacecraft appearing to be the blackness of space around it. That is why they wanted the interior dark and blocked out the sun from any other windows. Here you can see the extruded window, probably 2 inches thick at the bottom. This is because the Earth's shine is coming in at a downward angle. It also causes the Earth to appear to be an irregularly shaped circle, for you are seeing the outside of the window at the bottom and the inside of the window at the top, which together form 2 different sized halves of a circle. Subsequently, this take was never used. As they perfected the shot, a crescent-shaped piece of black material was inset slightly into the window to create the illusion of the Earth's terminator line dividing night and day. It is uncannily convincing. During this segment, intended to be edited and played back later for the worldwide television audience, dated July 18, 1969, Neil Armstrong condemns himself as he states that he is 130,000 miles out, or halfway to the moon, as the NASA flight log also states on this date, when he is in reality in low Earth orbit of a few hundred miles.
Roger, Houston, Apollo 11. Calling in from about 130,000 miles out.
Here, during another segment, also intended to air after review, Neil Armstrong falsely explains to the viewers how the shot is attained by putting the camera's lens to the window's glass, as it would have to be if they were the claimed distance away from the Earth.
We only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera.
If the window was completely filled up with a TV camera, as he stated, then an astronaut's arm would not be able to get between the camera and the window, as it obviously does here in this outtake.
South America becomes invisible just off beyond the Terminator or inside the shadow.
You can also notice how the astronaut operating the camera reacted to the mistake by attempting to pan away from it.
Blue gas. See white bands of major cloud formations across the Earth.
This is a segment that they believed wasn't even being recorded, much less suitable for broadcast, for the lens was being zoomed out and the scene was being changed to that of an interior of the astronauts at work, and apparently the stop button popped back up on the recorder without notice. Here is the diffused work light that they used to see camera controls, but not throw light onto the spacecraft's wall. Here they remove part of the crescent insert. Finally, the iris is opened up to see the real location of the camera and the very bright and near Earth out the window. Here is the slate for the 19th of July, and the same shot of trickery on the 19th of July. and then the 20th, and the same misleading shot on the 20th. Later that evening, they were said to be walking on the moon. How can this be when they were in Earth orbit only 9 hours earlier, and the moon is some 3 days' journey away? Furthermore, if they genuinely went to the moon, why would they be faking any part of it? Why this trickery with the window? By faking being halfway to the moon, it becomes apparent that they did so because they could not even go halfway. On the 25th anniversary of the event, in 1994, Neil Armstrong made a rare public appearance and held back tears as he spoke these brief cryptic remarks before the next generation of taxpayers.
Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you, that is, undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
It was all recorded on these telemetry tapes. So where is this hard evidence?
I haven't seen anything that indicates the telemetry data is even in existence, and as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
But your own research has shown the telemetry data is missing.
That's right.
Could this be true? Mankind's first interplanetary exploration and the original science data is missing?
11, this is Houston, radio check, over.
If it's anywhere, it should be here at NASA's Goddard Space Center in Maryland, home to the National Space Science Data Archives.
This film you're making now, what is it?
This is a film trying to prove that Apollo 11 happened.
Does it have a name? I mean, do you have a name for it yet, or are you?
I'm calling it "Did We Go?"
Did we go? Okay.
Doesn't have it either. The Smithsonian doesn't have it. Johnson doesn't have it.
Right. We've been unable to track it down. I mean, we don't know where this telemetry data ended up, and we don't know what path it may have taken. So, unfortunately, I'm afraid I can't really give you much of a clue as to where this data ended up and whether it still exists or not.
The moon is supposedly 238,000 miles away. It's noticeably much closer. The sun, too. Which is why on a flat Earth the sun is able to set due to perspective. On the flat plane, it's closer, it's smaller, so the further it travels away from you, it appears to go down. It's far enough away to where you can't see the light.
When we have hot spots proving locality, that it can be 93 million miles away.
We are looking at a very local sun.
The sun and moon are both heavenly bodies of light that follow their own unique paths across the sky. These luminaries can be observed now as they have been seen for thousands of years to travel above us, emitting their own light to the world. However, the Masonic experts at NASA have convinced us that it is not these magnificent luminaries revolving above us as they appear, but instead, it is us revolving around the sun. They also tell us that the moon is not producing its own light, but rather it is a big spherical rock and nothing more than a reflector of the sun's light. The only problem is that the more you look into it, this is just not the case. The sun and moon are both equal yet opposite luminaries, with one ruling the day and one ruling the night. The sun gives light to the earth and brings warmth and energy, and without these things we would not be able to see, move, or grow food. We depend on the sun's light and energy to survive. This explains why many ancient cultures held great respect for the sun and personified it as a deity. We are told that the sun is 93 million miles away, even though it appears to be much closer. In high-altitude balloon footage, hotspots can be seen on the tops of clouds beneath the sun, which can only be a direct result of a local body of light above the Earth. The sun travels around the Earth every 24 hours, while the moon travels around every 25 hours, giving us days, nights, and seasons. The sun's annual journey around the Earth is what determines the distinct seasons we experience on the flat Earth. When the sun travels closest to the North Pole, it is summer in the north and winter in the south. When the sun is furthest from the North Pole, closest to the outer regions, it is summer in the south and winter in the north.
In the flat Earth model, the sun and moon luminaries revolve around the Earth once every 24 hours for the sun and approximately 25 hours for the moon, illuminating like spotlights the areas over which they pass. The sun's annual journey from tropic to tropic, solstice to solstice, is what determines the length and character of days, nights, and seasons. This is why equatorial regions experience almost year-round summer and heat, while higher latitudes north and especially south experience more distinct seasons with harsh winters. The heliocentric model claims seasons change based on the ball Earth's alleged axial tilt and elliptical orbit around the sun. Their flawed current model even places us closest to the sun, 91,400,000 miles, in January, when it is actually winter, and farthest from the sun, 94,500,000 miles, in July, when it's actually summer throughout much of the Earth. They say due to the ball Earth's tilt, different places receive different amounts of direct sunlight, and that is what produces the seasonal and temperature changes. This makes little sense, however, because if the sun's heat travels over 90 million miles to reach the ball Earth, how could a slight tilt, a mere few thousand miles maximum, negate the sun's 90 million mile journey, giving us simultaneous tropical summers and Antarctic winters?
Heliocentrists will often bring up Eratosthenes as proof of a distant sun and Earth's curvature due to the different lengths of shadows cast from sunlight on various places. Eratosthenes recorded how at high noon in Syene, no shadow was cast, and the sun's rays could reach to the bottom of his well, while in Alexandria, a metal rod placed vertically casted a significant shadow. However, this can occur on both a flat Earth and a ball Earth. Eratosthenes concluded that rather than the shadows being cast in different angles due to the sun's crepuscular rays, instead the shadows were cast in different angles due to the Earth's curvature. The only problem is, Eratosthenes made his conclusions assuming the sun's rays to be perfectly parallel, but this is not reality. In other words, Eratosthenes based his claims off false assumptions rather than basing his claims off reality and what we can observe. This faulty assumption led to his faulty conclusion. By using sextants, plane trigonometry, and human eyesight, we can observe that the sun's rays are not parallel, and Eratosthenes' observations do not prove Earth is a globe, but work just as well on a flat Earth. The moon is the equally divine opposite of the sun, giving us the yin-yang of sun and moon, hot and cold, and day and night. The moon traces a similar path to that of the sun's annual journey. The moon gives light to the night sky as a luminary, and its phases seem to be its own function. Moonlight has many different effects on plants and foods in sunlight. While the sun's light is warm, dry, and preserving, the moon's light, on the other hand, is cold, damp, and putrefying. When placing a thermometer in direct sunlight, it will read a higher temperature than a thermometer placed in the shade. In direct moonlight, a thermometer will read lower than a thermometer placed in the shade. Not only does the moon appear to emit its own light, but it also appears to create its own heat, different than that of the sun's.
55 plus 61, 62. Okay, let's take this. Okay, now we're here. No moonlight. 72. 71. 72, 71. 72. Wow, it's way warmer in the shade. Let's hold on, we're gonna move it back. Let's change for a second. I'm not sure where the moonlight is. Let's just move it all the way to the moonlight.
No, I can see the moonlight.
Where is it?
Because it's right around the shadow of the...
Down to 56.
I'll do it all the way to the right.
64. 56, 55. 60, 61. 55.
We are told that the moon is not a self-luminous, semi-transparent body of light as it appears, but rather that the moon is a solid spherical rock, reflecting sunlight that Freemasons can land on. However, pictures have been taken showing stars being seen through the moon. This would be impossible if the moon was solid, and stars shining through the moon can be seen in Muslim and Freemasonic symbolism. Videos and pictures have also been taken, showing the clear blue sky visible through the afternoon moon. The sun and moon clearly are more significant than what we have been told. These luminaries move above us every day and every night. I find the sun and moon to be beautiful, but even though we can describe what they do and how they appear, I don't know if we'll ever be able to identify what these luminaries actually are or how they function. Eclipses have always been touted as veritable proof of the spherical Earth due to the round shadow that is cast upon the moon during a lunar eclipse. The explanation for this occurrence is that the sun is 400 times farther away than the moon and is magically 400 times larger than the moon. How convenient. The distances and sizes just so happen to be the exact diameters necessary to make the sun and moon look as if they are coincidentally the same size. Our everyday experience shows us that the sun and moon appear to be the same size and trace similar paths. The problem with this heliocentric theory is that there have been multiple occurrences throughout history where the sun has been seen in the sky at the same time as the moon while the round shadow is being cast. It's called a selenilion. This would be impossible on a ball Earth because we are told that a lunar eclipse is when the sun, Earth, and moon are in a perfect 180-degree line. If the sun is still in the sky at the time of the eclipse, then this straight line would not be made. Therefore, it would be impossible for the round shadow on the moon to be the Earth's, so it must be caused by something else. Gravity is the Masonic key to holding the very foundations of this sun cult together. Freemason Sir Isaac Newton convinced the world that instead of objects falling due to the laws of density and buoyancy, rather objects fell due to a magical pulling force called gravity. We are told that gravity is the reason water curves around the ball Earth and keeps us stuck from flying off from Earth's breakneck speed. Of course, this force can be observed nowhere in the natural world and cannot be tested and proven in any form of experiments. Imagine a force that is just strong enough to hold oceans and people stuck to the Earth, yet is just weak enough to allow butterflies and airplanes to fly freely in all directions. Gravity is also what allows moons to orbit planets and planets to orbit stars. Gravity seems to pick and choose which functions it desires to perform. Either gravity should cause Earth to crash into the sun, or orbit the sun. Either gravity should cause people to stick to the Earth, or orbit the Earth. If you try spinning a wet tennis ball, the water will fly off in every direction. No matter how many times repeated or tested, water will never form to the exterior shape of the tennis ball, because that defies the natural physics of water. Of course, the Masonic heliocentrists have an explanation for this. They claim that the reason we can't observe water or small objects being pulled or attracted to larger objects, such as a ball, is simply because gravity only works at planetary scales. In other words, gravity cannot be observed anywhere on Earth because it only works with giant objects such as planets or stars. Again, your common sense and logic has been explained away, and you must blindly believe that what you are being told is true. Gravity is unobservable, untestable, unrepeatable, and unprovable, which defies the laws of science, and which claims must be observable, testable, repeatable, and provable. Believing in a theory that can't be proven but must require blind faith for its existence is beyond foolish. Gravity is unprovable pseudoscience. However, the laws of density and buoyancy explain the natural world around us and can be proven. If an object is heavier or denser than the air surrounding it, it will fall to the ground. If an object is lighter than the air surrounding it, it will rise, like a helium balloon. This is due to the natural laws of density, causing objects to fall, and buoyancy, causing objects to rise. If you drop a feather, an object just slightly denser than air, it will slowly float away and descend to the ground. If you drop a bowling ball, an object greatly heavier than air, it will instantly fall to the ground. This isn't because gravity prefers bowling balls over feathers, but rather objects fall to the ground based on density and buoyancy. Unlike gravity, the laws of density and buoyancy can be observed and proven through experiments, and is another proof of flat Earth. Polaris is the one star in the night sky that has not moved for thousands of years. This is an observable, testable fact that can be proven. Polaris is the star that sits directly above the North Pole, and the fixed stars revolve in perfect circles around the center point of the flat Earth. The word planet derived from the Old English planet and the Greek word planetai, which meant wanderer or wandering. The ancients knew planets as wandering stars because they appeared to be stars that wandered around the sky in their own unique paths, different from the fixed stars, circling Polaris in their fixed positions. This is further proof that it is not us revolving around the heavenly bodies, but rather it is the stars and heavenly bodies that revolve above us, proving the geocentric model. It is not observable, provable, or even scientific to claim that thousands of years ago, Polaris moved and the other stars changed positions as the center of rotation. If Earth really was a spinning ball, we would never observe the same stars every night circling around the same pole star, but instead, we would see different stars and constellations each night as we fly through the universe. Every night we should see a new set of stars, yet this never occurs, and the same stars have been seen for thousands of years circling above our geocentric flat plane.
The North Pole was the magnetic monopole center point of the flat Earth, with Polaris, the North Pole star, situated directly above. Polaris was the only motionless star in the heavens, with all the other constellations revolving perfect circles over the Earth every night.
Directly above the axis of spin is the pole star, Polaris, okay, directly over the North Pole. And we're told that the reason that all the stars spin around the North Star is because the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. So why do we see perfect circles? You know, because that's the slowest speed, and yet the Earth is moving 67 times faster that way and 600 times faster that way. So you should see the stars do all sorts of strange motions, but you don't. You only see them make these perfect circles.
Way stretching across 90 miles. On the ball Earth, there should be over 5,000 feet of curvature, yet not an inch can be detected. Surely if the Earth curved, such a flat road would not exist, yet it does, and proves the flat Earth. You might find this one funny. Kansas has been proven to be flatter than a pancake. A study showed that on a scale where 1.0 is completely flat, the flatness of a pancake is 0.957, while Kansas is 0.9997. That's flat. This means that across Kansas, at the span of 400 miles, there should be about 20 miles of curvature. Considering the size of Kansas as a US state, there should be plenty of Earth's curve to be measured, yet instead it is perfectly flat and level. The Black Rock Desert in Nevada covers an area of 1,000 miles and is 100 miles long. At this distance, there should be about 7,000 feet of curvature, but not a single inch can be detected. Railways and train tracks also lend support for the flat Earth and debunk the globe. The London and Northwestern Railway is 180 miles long, stretching from London to Liverpool in a straight line. If the Earth were a ball, this railway would be curving at an arc at an incredible height of 5,640 feet, which is not the case. Engineers and surveyors make no allowance for curvature, and the idea of train tracks having to be designed to curve with the Earth's rotundity is preposterous. It is already hard enough to make railroads curve left and right, yet we are supposed to believe that railroads are also designed to bend over the curve of the Earth? Railroads are not designed under those circumstances. Therefore, this is yet another proof the Earth is not a globe.
That canals, tunnels, and railroads are never built with curvature in mind whatsoever. That's not necessary. And if there were, then their plans would be off, in fact. I've got quotes in my book from railroad engineers and canal builders saying how it's hard enough for railroads to make curves horizontally, let alone if we were on a ball and railroads would have to be curving up on the ball. And they give examples of different railroads over the Earth and how long they are and how much curvature they'd have to be ascending, and how it would be so impossible for the trains to be able to go up this curve, because trains are made to be on a level. They just can't operate that way. So there's a lot of proofs like that.
The Sala de Uyuni, also known as the Bolivian Salt Flats, is the world's largest salt flat. It expands and remains perfectly flat and level for over 4,000 square miles. There should be an exponential amount of curvature seen, yet not an inch can be measured. Flat places like this prove that Earth could not be a sphere, but flat and level. The Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah cover an area of 40 miles where on a globe there should be about 1,000 feet of curvature. Instead, the salt flats remain flat and level, consistent with the flat Earth. The Suez Canal is 100 miles long, connecting the Mediterranean Sea with the Gulf of Suez on the Red Sea. The Suez Canal remains entirely uninterrupted by locks and is an astonishing proof of flat Earth. The canal was dug just 26 miles along a horizontal datum line with no curvature taken into consideration, and runs perfectly parallel and level the whole way through. The Great Canal of China was said to be 700 miles long and was dug without Earth's curvature considered, as the Chinese knew of Earth as a stationary plane.
If PJ was 6 feet tall and he had a clone, who was also 6 feet tall, right, who walked 1 mile away from him, the ground his clone would be standing on would be 8 inches lower than the ground that he was standing on, right? Again, the curvature math is 8 inches per mile squared. So the first mile, 1 times 1 is 1 times 8 is 8 inches. So the ground from point A to point B is going to be 8 inches below point A. Right, you with me so far? Now if the clone had a clone who walked another mile away, that clone's ground would be 32 inches below PJ's ground. Why? Because it's 8 inches per mile squared. 2 miles, okay, 2 times 2 is 4, times 8 is 32. So the ground that clone number 2 is standing on is 32, almost 3 feet below the ground that PJ is standing on. And if we had yet another clone who was to walk 1 more mile, his ground would be 72 inches or 6 feet below PJ's. Thus, the top of clone number 3's head would be even with the bottom of PJ's feet. I know for some of you the gerbil just jumped off the wheel, so let's look at it again. This time we'll check it out from a different angle. Again, PJ's clone walks 1 mile away. The top of his head would be 8 inches lower than PJ's. Another clone walks an additional mile, and the top of his head is then 32 inches below PJ's. The third clone walks 1 more mile, and at just 3 miles away from PJ, the ground clone number 3 is standing on is 6 feet below PJ's. Thus, the top of clone number 3's head is going to be even with the bottom of PJ's feet. Now, I'm not trying to see whether or not the person can see the other person. What I'm trying to show you is the issue of the ground level. The ground level is the issue that I'm focused on with this example. Because if clone number 3's ground is 72 inches below the ground that PJ is standing on, it's going to be physically impossible for PJ to look straight ahead or to the left or the right or behind him and ever expect to see the horizon at his eye level. It cannot be done. I'm going to say it again. If you're just looking straight ahead, there is no way the horizon could ever be at your eye level. When the ground you're standing on is immediately beginning to recede away from you in every direction, you're standing on a point on a ball, supposedly. The ground you're standing on immediately begins to recede away in every direction 8 inches per mile squared. And speaking of myths, people who think ships are disappearing over the curve in less than 10 miles distance, it's got to work both ways. I mean, if we're on a ball, then when the ship is going away from you on the, let's say, the z-axis, going, from you to a point away from you, and it's rolling over the ball in less than 10 miles, then you should have the exact same effect looking left to right on the x-axis. You should be seeing ships rolling up to the top of the ball and rolling down on the lateral x-axis. If it's a ball, they got to be rolling both ways, away from you and side to side. We never see that though. You can go to the beach and do a panoramic shot and put a parallel line over it, and from end to end, and this is a lot more than just 5 miles, there's no perceived curvature here. None. Flat as a pancake. And in fact, these are some pictures I took on the beach at Malibu, California. And I went from there way up into the mountains above Pepperdine University and looked out. And, easily there's got to be probably close to 100 miles left to right. The distance on the horizon there has got to be, quite a bit there. Put a parallel line over it, flat. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say ships are rolling over the ball on the z-axis without having the same exact perception on the x-axis. I was thinking about that while we were on Lake Michigan. We were on the east coast of the lake looking toward the west. And so if you're standing on the east coast looking toward the west, and you claim that ships are disappearing in 3, 4, 5, 10 miles, whatever, distance, then people who are standing on the southern coastline would make the same claim. If they're on the south looking toward the north, they would say the same thing. Oh, I see ships disappearing in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 miles away. So if the person standing on the south coast looking north is claiming that ships are disappearing, and the person standing on the east coast looking west is saying the same thing, then both people have to observe the alleged curvature that the other person is claiming the ships are going over.
Many heliocentrists have convinced us that the Earth beneath our feet is not stationary and motionless as it appears, but instead it is constantly spinning. Have you ever felt the Earth spin? Again, this religious cult demands that you throw out and disregard your senses to maintain the silly belief that you are on a spinning ball. However, there are some fatal flaws to this fallacious theory that light must be shed upon. For instance, every experiment in history that made an attempt to prove the Earth's motion has failed, such as the Michelson-Morley experiment. Albert Michelson and Edward Morley tried passing light through two pathways, one at the angle of the supposed Earth's motion, and the other at the right angles to its motion. The light traveling with the Earth's motion should have taken longer to return than the light traveling at the right angles, yet no difference was ever detected, even after repeating it multiple times. This failure to detect Earth's alleged motion would go down as a remarkable proof of the stationary, motionless Earth. The fact that no motion can be detected in any experiment or even with our natural senses is very bizarre, because we are told that Earth spins over 1,000 miles per hour, circles the Sun at 67,000 miles per hour, the solar system is traveling at 500,000 miles per hour, with the Milky Way galaxy hurtling at an incredible 670 million miles per hour. The fact that no experiment could detect any of this motion and humans cannot feel any motion at all is an astounding proof that Earth is not moving. If the Earth was really a spinning ball, pilots would constantly have to change and correct their altitudes downwards to prevent the airplane from flying off straight into outer space. The artificial horizon in an airplane is based off a gyroscope, which is designed to always remain level and upright under any circumstance. No matter how tilted or curved the surface is, the gyroscope would remain upright. So if an airplane began following the curvature of the Earth, then the artificial horizon would begin to roll backwards. Yet this never occurs, therefore proving airplanes fly in the air above a plane.
If a pilot is flying around the curve of the Earth, then he should be dipping the nose down every 5 minutes. He should be dipping the nose down to stay around the curve. But the thing that really got me interested was, as you say, the gyroscope. In a plane there is an artificial horizon, okay, and it's based on a gyroscope. And if you spin a gyroscope on a surface, it will want to stay upright. You can twist and tilt the surface as much as you like, the gyroscope will stay upright. So if a plane has a gyroscope and it starts following the curve of the Earth, the gyroscope would stay upright, which means the artificial horizon will start to roll backwards. But it doesn't. That's absolute proof that a plane flies over a flat surface rather than a curved one.
If the Earth was truly spinning eastwards at over 1,000 miles per hour, airplanes traveling 500 miles per hour eastwards would never arrive at their destinations before the Earth comes speeding up from behind. Meanwhile, an airplane traveling westwards would arrive at twice the speed in half the time. Yet this is never observed.
So let's start with an aeroplane, right? While if this is true, right, as the aeroplane flies towards the horizon, he actually flies up around the ball, not towards the horizon. Right? And your position on the ground, you're at 90 degrees to the tangent, to the horizon. You look up, what do you see? You see the bottom of the aeroplane. It means airplanes at different distances from you will all be flying at different angles, depending on their height. And the pilot, while he sees the horizon, he applies that theorem to the horizon. And a passenger, well, he'll be looking into space. Or does the Pythagoras theorem only apply to the pilot? You see, it simply doesn't work.
The crux of this issue is the lack of direct flights in the Southern Hemisphere. I took a look at some of these flights and particularly focused on flights from Cape Town to Auckland, New Zealand. Generally, flights in the Southern Hemisphere tend to be indirect with one or more connections and lengthy layovers. Such is the case with this one from Cape Town to Auckland. This flight came out around about 37 hours with a connecting flight in Dubai. Now if you look on a map, Cape Town to Auckland is a straight shot across the Indian Ocean, 7,310 miles. That should take about 12 hours. But in this case, we're taking thousands of miles north to Dubai, then back down south to Melbourne, and then across to Auckland. It doesn't make any sense. Until, that is, you look at it on the flat Earth model. Now you can see it's a straight line from Cape Town to Dubai to Melbourne, and the distance is more like 16,000 miles. So the total journey time of 37 hours is there to hide the fact that your actual flight time is 26 hours rather than 11 or 12. Now, I did find one direct flight operated by Qantas, but who knows? The flight was 14 hours long, but does that flight actually exist? I don't know. Short of booking that flight and flying it, I wouldn't know. But it strikes me that you could advertise such a flight, price it beyond the reach of most people, and cancel it for anybody who does take it. But that's just speculation. Now, the GPS system would obviously show up any anomalies in the flight plan, but it seems they've found a very simple way of getting around that problem, and that is switching off GPS tracking for all flights in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, this is an image from Flight Tracker, and you can see straight off that in the Northern Hemisphere you'll see planes over the ocean, but there are none in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, I spent some time looking at it on flighttracker.com, and I actually verified this information, but I couldn't capture the data on my computer. So here's a video of planes disappearing and reappearing off the tracking systems.
So hey guys, I'm on planefinder.net. I'm tracking airplanes in the Southern Hemisphere, trying to do some research to verify or debunk this flat Earth guy. And what he said is that airplanes disappear in the South Atlantic near the, in the Southern Hemisphere when they fly over oceans. And it's true. I was tracking a British Airways flight from Buenos Aires to London. And I was tracking, and then it disappeared. And then I clicked on this plane right here, Qatar. See how the flight path, like when you click on the plane, the flight path appears or disappears, right? So I clicked on this plane looking for my British Airways flight, and I found this flight, and look, see how the flight path just starts in the middle of nowhere right here? His flight path starts in the middle of nowhere. That's because what they do with flights in the Southern Hemisphere is they disappear them. They turn off the GPS over the ocean, and then they reappear the flights about an hour before landing. And that's exactly what the Flat Earth guy said they do. And that's exactly what they're doing.
From the Mail Online, this flight, okay, it's a flight from Taiwan to Los Angeles. That flight where when the lady gave birth to a baby, he departed from Taiwan. So, caught on camera, amazing moment. A woman gives birth to a premature baby girl at 30,000 feet on a Taiwan to Los Angeles flight. So here are some of the pictures. You can see this online. Just go to the Mail Online. Alright, and type there Taiwan to Los Angeles flights. So China Airlines a China Airlines flight landed in Alaska with an extra passenger after an expectant mother gave birth to a baby girl more than 8 weeks early. The Taiwan to Los Angeles flight was forced to make an emergency landing on Thursday after Taiwanese passengers' water broke 6 hours into the 19-hour journey. So, if she departed, that's why I have here, let's go. She departed Taiwan, okay, Taiwan right here, and she was flying to Los Angeles, okay, it's the blue line, okay, she was flying to Los Angeles. 6 hours into the flight, let's say 1/3 of the journey, the water broke, okay, so I'm dividing this distance in 3, okay, it's 19 hours flight, 6 hours into the flight, they had to land. So the easiest way for her could have been actually Hawaii, right here in the middle. Okay, Hawaii. She could have flown to Japan. She could have, not she, the pilot could have flown back to Taiwan, but they landed in Alaska. Okay, so on a sphere, doesn't really make sense. But when you look here, you see a straight line, it's Taiwan right here, down to LA. So they made an emergency stop right here in Alaska. It only makes sense on a flat Earth map, not on a globe. Okay, so this is the first flight. Let's talk about the second one. From USA Today, Cathay Pacific plane faulty fan for emergency landing. So I have here a map, also the same thing. Okay, they left Hong Kong to Los Angeles. They could have stopped right here in Hawaii. Instead, they went all the way to Alaska. It doesn't really make sense on the globe. Just like the Taiwan flight. Makes perfect sense on the flat Earth map. Hong Kong, LA, Alaska. Hong Kong, LA, Alaska. That's where they landed. Okay? The flight was from Chicago to Doha. Okay? From Chicago to Doha. Alright, Chicago. Let's look at Chicago right here. Green line. Let's say they're flying straight to Doha over the Atlantic. Okay? They could have stopped in Spain, Portugal, or North Africa, anywhere in North Africa, all the way here to Doha. Okay, this green line will be the route from this flight, Chicago to Doha. Moscow is right here. Okay? So how could they have stopped in Moscow if they are flying from Chicago to Doha? Okay? Moscow is up here. Okay, why? It doesn't make sense here. But when you look here, you see here the blue line, Chicago, Doha. Okay, what do we have? This is sticker right here, Moscow. Okay, this is Moscow right here. Okay, Moscow. Alright, Chicago, Doha, Moscow. That's why they landed in Moscow, because it was probably the nearest airport for them if they were flying over Russia. Okay, so we have here. Alright, let me read it for you. Moscow, an Emirates passenger plane en route from San Francisco to Dubai made an emergency landing at Moscow's Domodedovo airport after one of its passengers felt sick, a source at the airport told TASS on Sunday. Okay, so So another flight from North America to the Middle East that made an emergency landing in Moscow. So let's look here. San Francisco, okay, this is the black line here, San Francisco. Let's say they flew over the Atlantic again, right? They would have to fly over the Atlantic and then Spain, Italy, Turkey, and then Dubai, okay? That's the route. Or if they flew over the Pacific, they would have flown over China, all the way to Pacific, and San Francisco. Alright? So, where's Moscow? Why stopping in Moscow? Okay, Moscow is up here. Okay, this circle here is Moscow. Right? Dubai, right here. Okay? Makes no sense. So, one more time, if we look here, San Francisco. Okay, get this closer. San Francisco. Alright, Dubai. Okay, this blue line right here. San Francisco, Dubai. Moscow. Alright, they landed in Moscow. Okay.
Now, I know a lot of this evidence seems circumstantial, but there are many flights in the southern hemisphere that have stopovers in seemingly nonsensical places that only make sense on a flat Earth. Santiago, Chile to Auckland, for instance, stops over in Los Angeles. Nonsensical on a globe makes perfect sense on a flat Earth. And the only way to verify these flight paths just happens to be switched off for all southern hemisphere flights. Circumstantial, I'll grant you, but compelling nonetheless. So let's take a close look at Antarctica. The first thing you'd encounter when you reached Antarctica would be a 200-foot wall of ice, followed by 300 miles of Antarctic desert. No life, no vegetation, and temperatures that drop to minus 100 degrees centigrade. And if you manage to survive that, then you encounter a mountain range 2 miles high. Those mountains are called the Rockefeller Mountains, and at the top is the Rockefeller Plateau. Interesting. And beyond that, nobody knows what's there. Apart from maybe one man, Richard E. Byrd. Admiral Byrd led 3 expeditions down to Antarctica. Now, the last 2 weren't just expeditions, they were military operations. Operation High Jump and Operation Deep Freeze. And here's Admiral Byrd explaining what he found down there.
4 or more years ago, about 35 years ago, our guest tonight found out whether there was any land north of the North American continent. He made that first discovery flight, and I must say that Admiral Byrd, our guest tonight, is not only our greatest living explorer, but he's been an inspiration to countless Americans. Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole, from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
That's a tremendous
So
challenge.
there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Admiral, do you hope to see that?
I do. Yeah. So I'm willing to say to you that there will be a number of expeditions that will follow, I think, year after year, at the bottom of the world, because the government has really become interested.
Well, Admiral Byrd, I can understand, I think everybody can, the interest in the North Pole because it's so near our greatest challenger, Soviet Russia. But why this interest in the bottom of the world? Nobody living down there, is there?
No, it's pretty cold. There's only one permanent resident, that's the emperor penguin. The little ones live further north. I tell you one reason they're interested. It's by far the most valuable, important place left in the world for science. That's why the scientific groups all over the nation are really interested. But more important than that, it has to do with the future of the nation, those to come after us, or even during your lifetime, because it happens to be an untouched reservoir of natural resources.
You speak of the resources of Antarctica. What are they? What are the natural resources there?
Well, we've found enough of coal within 180 miles of the South Pole in a great ridge of mountains. It's not covered with snow, enough to supply the whole world for quite a while.
Well,
that's the coal. Now, there's evidence of many other minerals. We are pretty sure there's oil. Now, that coal shows the bottom of the world. Now, by far the coldest spot in the world. Where that coal is gets 100 below zero in the winter.
Well,
it was once tropical. So we think there's oil there, and there's evidence, probably uranium there.
Is it any secret? Is there uranium there? That would be the only thing that would be practical to actually go after, I suppose. Everything else would be economically unfeasible, wouldn't it?
Well, as we recklessly expend our resources, the time will come when we'll have to go after that stuff down there. Well, you know, I avoided what you said about uranium. I'm not sure about that. I don't want to have the world fighting over the Antarctic.
And Robert, is there a competition among other nations to try to get information about Antarctica and possibly to secure some of these resources?
Well, yes. There are now 7 nations very much interested. Russia is interested tremendously. That I'm sure of. Australia has an expedition down there. The Argentine, the Chile, New Zealand, Britain, and so on. Now, you can understand those people down there being interested because they live down there, the New Zealanders, the Argentinians, the Chileans, and Australians. And so we don't do much about claiming anything.
Admiral, you make this sound a little crowded. Are there that many expeditions now there or en route there?
Well, you know, as I said, it's the most peaceful place in the world, but I don't think it will be for long because of this intense interest on the part of other nations and this nation.
Well, Admiral Byrd, are private expeditions a thing of the past? Is expedition and exploration, making expedition and exploration now purely a government function because of the tremendous cost and organization?
No, I don't think so. I think down south it may be more or less a thing of the past, but not other expeditions that go there. A lot of them go north now.
This latest expedition now on the way is a government expedition, I take it.
Yes, that's the government.
However, may I ask you, is there a great difference between the top of the world and the bottom of the world?
There is. Now, the North Pole is the center of an ocean 10,000 feet deep. The South Pole, the center of a plateau, 10,000 feet high. The North Polar Sea is surrounded by continents slightly frozen. The Antarctic continent is surrounded by a belt of ice, frozen seas of at least 1,200 miles thick. Now, the south is a plateau. It gets, in some places, 14,000 feet up. I've been over areas about 13,000, and it's a little bit chilly up there. So there's that big difference between the top and bottom of the world. The north really isn't very cold up there.
The derivation and definition of a linear aircraft model. In the introduction, they flat out say right here, this report documents the derivation, which means the origin, and the definition of linear aircraft model for a rigid aircraft of constant mass flying over a flat, non-rotating Earth. The conclusion, the concluding remarks of the report and all the math and the equations. Look at that. This report derives and defines a set linearized system matrices for rigid aircraft of constant mass flying in a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth. Date distributed July 1949, number of pages 19. Just so you can see, here's getting into it here. Now, notice it says the of the paper says outer gravitational field and shape of the physical surface of the Earth. Gives this guy's name, some Russian guy. Center Science Research, Institute for Geodetics, Aerial Surveying and Cartography, Moscow. Everybody see that? They stated here that where it is not determinable at all of the points of space without the knowledge of the shape of the Earth, but since the shape of the Earth is not known, released by a proof of release 2000, relation between light scattering coefficient for various angles of optical thickness of the atmosphere. Calculation of light dispersion, higher orders. This is USR, geophysics, light dispersion, this is the study they were doing. Proof presented light dispersion, higher orders can be computed from data obtained in plane direct observation for USSR references. And this is the institution, the Academy of Sciences, USSR Astrophysical Institute. The study of the dispersion of light in the Earth's atmosphere, degree, doctoral, physics, math, science, and so they just tell you the whole thing here. Joint Council, March 1957, Academy of Science, USSR. Here's all these PhDs and scientists that are involved in this study at this time. Tells you a little more of the introduction, the table of contents. In investigation of light scattering in the Earth's atmosphere, formula for the brightness of the blue sky with consideration of first order scattering and all that, blah, blah, blah. All right. And talks about this first semester, 1957, dissertation. Said the observations were carried out in 12 locations at various altitudes above the sea. Various climate, meteorological, synoptic conditions. The observations were carried out mainly during high transparency of the atmosphere and the visual range of the spectrum, in the absence of snow cover. In the investigations, 2 instruments designed by V.G. Fescunov or whatever were used. One of these was a visual photometer of the daytime sky intended for measuring the brightness of the firmament. Now what's very interesting about that is Daniel chapter 12 verse 4 talks about the righteous shining as the brightness of the firmament. The Bible also talks, 12:3, I'm sorry. The Bible also talks about what? That there are 4 lights. Talks about the sun, the moon, the stars, and the light. But it gets better. He says that to study the near sun halo and also the sun on the surface perpendicular to these rays. The dissertation contains a certain formula of the brightness of the sky, taking into consideration only the brightness of the first order, derived on the assumption of a flat earth and giving some conclusions. Whenever you see dot mil, in the United States, the only people that can have dot mil, military. This is the Army's research laboratory. Beacon position and altitude navigation aided by magnetometer. You can see the document prepared by the University of Delaware, Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, under contract to the U.S. government. Problem formulation, coordinate systems. The motion of an object usually described by rigid body equations of motion derived from Newton's laws. This section summarizes and notates 3 kinds of coordinate systems. The first is the Earth-fixed coordinate system, which is fixed to the Earth with a flat Earth assumption. Here we have the singular arc time optimal climb trajectory of aircraft in a 2-dimensional wind field. So this document goes on to say, in our minimum time to climb problem, the aircraft is modeled as a point mass and the flight trajectory is strictly confined in a vertical plane on a non-rotating flat Earth. Everybody see this? NASA technical memorandum. Where'd it come from? NASA.gov, right? Declassified. Freedom of Information Act tells you all about it. Determination of angles of attack and side slip from radar data and the roll stabilized platform. Langley researched that. What's in Langley? Virginia? Yeah, CIA headquarters, exactly. Also the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, Washington, D.C. Wait a minute, I thought they were in Florida and Houston, Texas. Oh, that's right. I'm sure they have an office. All right, let's keep going here. Here's the abstract. NASA Langley Research Center, technical memorandum, blah, blah, blah. Here is in the abstract. Basically what they're describing this manual is all about. It's a summary of it. Here's what they say. Equations for angles of attack and side slip relative to both rolling and non-rolling body axis system are derived for a flight vehicle for which radar and gyroscope attitude data are available. The method is limited, however, to application where a flat, non-rotating Earth may be assumed. This is interesting because he talks about, it gives you this little frame reference. Look at north, south, east, west, right? And they're telling you that, again, that represents the Earth fixed axis system. Everybody see that, right there? The radar provides range, azimuth, and elevation data from radar site to the vehicle throughout flight. So we're talking about stuff happening throughout flight, right? The data in conjunction with wind data can be easily converted to pitch, blah, 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 flight path angles. It is assumed herein that the Earth is represented as a flat and non-rotating reference frame. Here it is. Notice it says, also by definition, the X and Z plane will be vertical, perpendicular to the horizontal plane of the Earth at all times. Now, here's a doctoral dissertation by a PhD candidate that became part of this European Control Conference. In fact, I guess he graduated, but this doctoral dissertation that he began to speak to, I guess, the European Space Agency or whatever, a new path planner based on flatness approach, application to an atmosphere reentry mission. This was designed for the space shuttle, quote, reentry. And it's funny, they put orbit and reentry and stuff like that into quotations. Notice the outline of his doctoral dissertation, statement of guidance problem. Why would you have a guidance problem? Well, if you're basing stuff on a spherical Earth and it's really flat, then you're going to have a guidance problem. Right? So this guy comes along and goes, you know what? We got to get back to a flatness approach. He's talking about for this little vehicle right here. And we'll keep going. Notice he says model in flat Earth coordinates. Notice this, assumptions, meaning things we assume are true. Flat Earth, Coriolis and centrifugal forces neglected.
Don't matter.
Here's a doctoral candidate who graduated, got his PhD, becomes a speaker to the European Control Council. And he's telling them it's a flat Earth. We ignore Coriolis, meaning the spin of the Earth. It's completely ignored. Why? Because it doesn't exist. And it's what the Bible said all along. The Earth is fixed, stable, immovable, still, and at rest. Everything secret is being uncovered. Here's MIT. Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the top technical school in the country. What's this? dspace.mit.edu. Right? Property-based system design method with application to targeting system for small unmanned vehicles. And then in the description it says 3 targeting methods were considered assuming a flat Earth. Whoa. Why would an MIT professor, PhD, why would he assume the Earth is flat? Right? NASA.gov, April 1961, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, calculation of wind compensation for launching unguided rockets. Pretty serious stuff, rocket science. Rockets by Robert L. James Jr. and Ronald J. Harris, Langley Research Center, Langley, Virginia. Summary, method for calculating wind compensation for unguided missiles. It is derived from which has a greater degree of flexibility than previously proposed methods, blah, 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 blah. And they get into it. So they're telling you, summary, here's what we're up to, trying to figure out how to guide rockets. Let's look at this. It says trajectory simulation incorporating the above requirements is presented in reference 8. In addition to the above requirements, this simulation assumes a vehicle with 6 degrees of freedom and aerodynamic symmetry and roll, and the missile position, again, space will deal with that. They don't even, it's not what they're talking about. What we think, what they've told us, and what they know space is, 2 different things. So when they say it, they don't mean what they've lied about. The missile position in space is computed relative to a flat, non-rotating Earth. NASA.gov, right? Unpublished preliminary data, atmospheric oscillations, tells you the people. Georgia Tech project. Under contract, Georgia Tech project, contract, prepared National Aeronautics and Space Administration. So this was in conjunction with their engineers, Engineering Experiment Station, Georgia Institute of Technology, Atlanta, Georgia. The requirements for additional copies. Talks about that, says the Department of Defense contractors must be established for DDC services or have their need to know certified by the cognizant military agency. So this was not to be passed around. This was need to know. Georgia Tech project, just so you see it, boom, boom, April 1965. Tells you the abstract, develop present theories of atmospheric oscillations, blah, blah, blah. I don't have to. All right. A model frequently used is that of, everybody say it, flat, non-rotating Earth. The most one can profitably simplify the problem is to consider the isothermal atmosphere, plane level surfaces, and a non-rotating Earth. NASA.gov. Now this is general equations of motion for a damaged asymmetric aircraft. So what they're trying to do is fix equations if a plane loses part of its wing or tail fin or whatever, how to compensate and all that stuff, right? So that's what this is about. And the technical manual gives you this stuff. The introduction, here's the introduction, right? Just so you know, it says, in order to analyze the dynamics of damaged aircraft, the dynamic equations of motion must properly reflect the underlying physics. And here's what they say, rigid body equations of motion, reference to an arbitrary fixed point on the body. There are several approaches that can be used to develop the general equations of motion. The one selected here starts with Newton's laws applied to the collection of particles defining the rigid body. Any number of dynamics or physics books can serve as references. So they're saying the physics books can serve as references. So in this paper, the rigid body equations of motion over a flat, non-rotating Earth are developed. Atmospheric refraction errors for optical instrumentation. There you have it. Tells you technical memorandum, blah, 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 same thing, preliminary report, October, what do we got? See, we're backing up, 1953. White Sands Proving Ground, La Cruces, New Mexico. Here we go. Look at this here. Just wanted you to see the signatures, real signatures, Dr. Fred Hansen, Dr. J.W. Molnar or whatever, James C. McNatt, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force, Thomas W. Morgan, Major, United States Air Force, Systems Engineering Branch, Flight Determination Laboratory, White Sands Proving Ground. All here, right? Dr. So-and-so, Dr. So-and-so, General so-and-so. I guess they're stupid. This document was not to be seen. This document contains information affecting the national defense of the United States within the meaning of the espionage laws, Title 18 U.S.C., Sections 793 and 794. Its transmission or the revelation of its contents in any manner to an unauthorized person is prohibited by law. Now, I want to point this out. Present equations hold for any altitude. Everybody see that? I don't have time to read all of it. Present equations hold for any altitude. Table of contents, introduction, validity of flat Earth assumption for atmospheric calculations. Introduction here says a comprehensive study of atmospheric refraction errors for optical instrumentation. What is it based on? Based on a flat Earth assumption, will be published subsequently. The relative mass of the atmosphere at any elevation angle is given approximately by the cosine of the elevation angle. I may be pronouncing some of this wrong, but listen, this relationship is correct for a flat Earth and a flat atmosphere. What's this one? This is NASA Technical Memorandum, NASA.gov, mathematical model of a CH-53 helicopter. You guys know a helicopter pilot, right? So here's the NASA manual on that. Ames Research Center, Moffett Field, California. Equations of motion. The helicopter equations of motion are given in body axes with respect to a flat, non-rotating Earth. Here's another one, vision-based mobile target geolocalization and target discrimination using Bayes detection theory. You see, this is the Academy Center for the United States Air Force, U.S. Air Force Academy, UAS research. And this is for targeting for unmanned vehicle, aerial vehicles targeting manual. The objective of geolocalization problem is to estimate range to target, which can be estimated using the flat Earth model shown in Figure 2. The flat Earth model. And your little aerial craft locating a target. Now, if this line was curved here, as it does, 8 inches per mile square, that line is going to intersect at a different point. Flat Earth model, range estimation using flat Earth assumption. Army Research Laboratory, this is another one, calculating low atmosphere profiles, sound speed at night. So calculating sound speed, right? Pretty important stuff. It says to briefly examine short-range acoustic attenuation at night, we use low atmosphere profiles of wind speed, temperature, relative humidity shown before as input to a flat Earth non-turbulent acoustic propagation model called the Windows version scanning fast field program. Propagation of electromagnetic fields over flat Earth. Army Manual, February 2001. Here's the table of context. It says comparison of principal fields from an ideal dipole oriented perpendicular to a horizontal and homogeneous flat Earth. Army Manual. They tell you right here, it's assumed that the transmitting antenna and target or receiver are located above but near the surface of a flat idealized Earth. Payloads for spinning projectiles. Army. Think you need to know where artillery is going to land? Look here. Projectile flight dynamics. A 6 DOF rigid projectile model is employed to predict the dynamics of a projectile in flight. The assumption of these equations assume a flat Earth.
And the result of the experiment with radio waves? The researchers used directional parabolic antennas, where in the spherical Earth model, communication would be impossible, as the minimum obstacle would preclude this, since at the distance of the experiment, the curvature of the Earth would generate an obstacle of 3.84 meters in height.
We have connected.
Got it. We're with connection here. It's responding. The machine is responding. Returning. I'm having connection to your computer there. We have a ping back here. The connection is established. The signal that we wanted, we could scan there and managed to find it here. Communication was established. It has been proven that at this distance, we have been able to establish communication. We know that any interference in the way would mean not achieve communication.
What about the geodetic curvature experiment performed on the buildings? Measurements were done of the bases and tops of 2 buildings, one in Torres, Rio Grande do Sul, and another in Natal, Rio Grande do Norte, 3,050 kilometers apart from each other. According to the theory of the spherical Earth, the distance of the measurements of the bases must be different than the measurements of the top, even in a few meters. But if the measurements are equal, this would show that the Earth has no curvature. Remembering the opinion of the INCRA engineers before the experiment,
probably there will be in relation to the extension of this line, perpendicular to the baseline. I believe it will be longer.
Thinking of the Earth as a globe, the initial expectation was that the measurements were different.
But when the results arrived, the base and the top measurements were the same, showing that the two buildings are leveled upright. And here the opening angle, where we read the point here, the base of the building and its height. As we do this calculation here, on this plane, we will always find this distance here. On this plane, we will always find this distance here.
The identical measurements of the distance between the bases and the tops prove that between the two buildings there is no curvature, proving that the Earth has no spherical shape. In the experiment of the geodesic curvature in the water, 3 points were obtained with a high-precision GPS on the Tres Marias Dam in Minas Gerais, whose extension exceeds 70,000 meters.
This first point, the elevation in relation to sea level is at 556 meters altitude.
The second point also presented the same result, 556 meters of altitude. If the third point were different, the water would be following the curvature of the Earth. If the measurements are the same, it will be proven that there is no curvature, but indeed flatness in the waters. And the measure of the third point surprised the researchers.
Here we also obtained the same measure, 556 meters at the level of the lagoon. We analyzed the data collected by the equipment, and all points show the same result, the same altitude, thus showing that the water in the dam remains level. These data overthrow the theory of sphericity, because according to this theory, the water should follow the curvature of the Earth. Only in a curve there is no level.
The 3 altitude measurements were identical, proving the leveling of the water, proving that the Earth has no spherical shape. And what is the result of the laser experiments? Did the team see the laser light on the other side?
We are here in the nocturnal experiment in the Tres Marias Reservoir. We are on the shore of the lake. The positioning of the laser is here by the lake, a meter or so from the water level where the second laser is. It is also in the same position, exactly 1.5 meters from the water level of the reservoir. As you can see, the two devices are communicating at a distance of 18 kilometers. We have successfully done an experiment today, and we are proving that the Earth does not have the format that science believes it has. So as we are at 18 kilometers, there is no water level difference from here to the other crew that is 18 kilometers away. It's exactly level. On this distance, there should be a visual obstruction by virtue of the curvature of approximately 6 meters, and we were able to get the signal from a laser cannon from the other shore at 18 kilometers on a little more than a meter from the level of the lagoon. This is the ultimate test. There is no curvature.
To guarantee the accuracy of the result, the researchers decided to conduct a surprise experiment. With the team still in place, a beam of light was lit that should be visible at 18 kilometers on the side where the team of surveyors was, who used a total station. At that distance, the Earth curvature would have risen 6.3 meters, equivalent to a 3-story building.
Do you see? Yes. Down. Can you see? Yes. Down. Can you see? Can you see? Yes. I am at water level. At water level. So okay, I will write down and you read the angles and the coordinates. There you take that height where it was blinking at the water level. It's on water level. But on how many meters high? 0. It's blinking in the water, right? It's in the water. 10 centimeters from the water. Okay, so I'm going to write down the angle here. Wait, Wilson.
During the experiment, a laser was added without warning the topographers.
Do you see any other light? I see it. I did see. I saw a laser now. He did see. He saw the laser. It die off. Lower the laser. All right, wait a minute, Wilson. Now I saw the laser. Did you see the laser? Not now. I saw the laser there. Lower a little bit. Do you see the light still? I see the laser there.
Vehicle motion. Ballistic vehicle motion. A closed-form solution is developed for the motion of a ballistic vehicle entering the atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth.
Gravity is the theory that science considers as the main factor to keep everything in harmony on a spherical planet.
Water does not come off the Earth because it has a central force pulling towards the center of the Earth, which is gravity. It does not exist. According to the experiments, gravity does not exist. From the fundamentals of nature, Plumb and Level overthrow the theory of gravity.
The plumb is an instrument used to gauge verticality. It is of fundamental use in civil construction to guarantee the verticality of the buildings.
This tool we use to get the wall in the right plumb because it cannot be out of plumb because the wall can fall. So this plumb is used for this, to keep it right and steady on the plumb. Neither there nor here, right there in the plumb.
The use of the plumb is the only way to ensure that construction is being erected in vertical alignment. The level is an instrument used to measure inclinations and is fundamental to ensure horizontality. It's used extensively in the areas of civil construction, surveying, photography, and astronomy, among others. The most common model is the bubble.
Any construction has to have level and plumb, because if it gets out of plumb and level, it can fall. That house can fall. This equipment is a system of communicating vessels and is used in the laboratory to demonstrate the behavior of water leveling. In whatever position we place the system, the water that is inside will always search its level. This behavior of the leveling can be proven not only in laboratory, but we can prove this in field experiments in ponds, lakes, and the seas.
This is a micro version of what we find all over the planet, leveled waters.
By verifying that the water remains level, both in micro and macro environments, it's also verified that gravity does not exist, because if this force existed, the waters would follow the curvature of the planet. But then, what forces act to maintain harmony on a non-spherical planet? Researchers from Dakila and the Ziggurats Technology Center have concluded that among the fundamentals of nature, the four main forces that, acting together, hold us firm to the ground are magnetism, density, pressure, and light. The researchers called this set of forces MDPL. Among the four MDPL forces, magnetism, in contrast to what science considers, is one of the strongest forces that act on Earth. It's the main force that keeps everything in balance, from the bonds of an atom to the Earth's magnetic field. One way to study the performance of the magnetic field of bodies is to perform a simple experiment where we transform into mechanical waves the kinetic energy produced by the magnetic field in an object. This can be reproduced by throwing an object into the water. Whatever the shape of the object, the waves produced will always be circular, as they are modulated by the Earth's magnetic field. Note that regardless of the shape of the object, the waves produced in the water will always have circular patterns. This happens because the waves in the water are being modulated by the influence of the Earth's magnetic field.
It does not exist. According to these experiments, gravity does not exist.
Why do they say Earth fixed system? Well, it's interesting. Here's a few verses, right? The Earth is not spinning. According to the Bible, Chronicles 16:30, He has fixed the earth firm and immovable. Psalm 93:1, Thou hast fixed the earth immovable and firm. Psalm 96:10, He has fixed the earth firm and immovable. Psalm 105, Thou didst fix the earth on its foundation so that it never can be shaken. Who made the earth and fashioned it Himself, fixed it fast. And of course, one of my favorites that I didn't put on here, Zechariah 1:11, that says the earth is still and it rests.